Hello, my name is Brianna and welcome to Different Headquarters. Today I wanted to talk about the misconceptions and stereotypes that can negatively impact people with autism. Now what I'm talking about kind of makes sense if I just tell you a recap on myself. So I was diagnosed in 2011 when I was turning 14, and I only, as being someone so young, only really knew autism in the stereotypes that I and my family and most people equate with autism. And when I was diagnosed, I initially didn't believe I had it. I thought I was incorrectly and wrongly diagnosed, and the reasons behind this all comes down to what the media portrays autism as and how we as a society are taught about autism and how some of those things are in fact correct, but for the most part are either incorrect or very specific stereotypes that only really include a small percentage of people with autism and don't incorporate autism as a whole. The reason I wanted to make this video is because I thought it important to share my story, because if I had have been more educated on autism and if I had have known more about it, then I would have gotten more help for my diagnosis. I admittedly only really sought help for my mental illness, which I must admit and agree to is the main source of most of my problems. My mental illness does impact my life more than my autism does. But in saying that, there is a lot of things that I now, with the knowledge I now have, can look at and see as it parts of my life that had I gotten help for, I may have accomplished things a lot easier, a lot quicker. I would have done a lot better in school had I been more educated on autism and believed I therefore had it, believed my diagnosis was in fact correct, and I probably would have sought a specialist's help, talked about autism and better ways to cope and deal and learn to live independently with my psychologists and psychiatrists and counsellors and therapists and all that throughout the years. Those are things I never did because I was kind of made to believe by a mixture of both society's teachings of autism and the fact that I didn't think I fit into what I was made to believe autism was, and a concoction of the fact that my parents didn't necessarily believe, not in any fault of their own. They, just like me, had a preconceived idea of what autism was, and it was very specific and didn't incorporate the symptoms I myself suffered with. So that, and there's also my doctors, my GPs and stuff that are less experienced with autism didn't believe either. So I had them on the same side of myself and my parents, everyone doubting me. So I obviously therefore doubted myself, my diagnosis, and had I been more educated and aware of autism as a whole, I might have gotten more help. I might have passed a few more years of secondary school. I might have enjoyed my secondary school life a lot more. I might have gotten more out of it. And I would have just been more comfortable in my own skin, knowing who I am, what I have been diagnosed with, how to cope with it, how to deal with it, how to embrace it. So essentially some of the stereotypes I wanted to talk about are things like the classic males primarily have autism. Now, most people now know that that is incorrect, but it wasn't that long ago that professionals even thought that males were the ones primarily with autism. Even Hans Asperger's himself, the guy who created the diagnosis of Asperger's, believed that only males could have Asperger's. And that was disproved by himself, actually. So it is now known by professionals, of course, that Asperger's is a disorder that all genders can have. Another big misconception is the low functioning and high functioning labels. Now, before you say anything, I do disagree with the labels. They're completely outdated, and I want to make an entire video on that, and I will in the future. But just for the sake of matters, low functioning and high functioning are two labels that talk about types of autism, and I really thought those were the only two types of autism. There was low functioning, high functioning, and Asperger's was often seen as high functioning, but I did not fit what is classified as high functioning. I am not above average in IQ. I'm not even average. I'm a bit below. That's fine. But it didn't sound right because I was diagnosed with Asperger's and I wasn't high functioning in the sense of being incredibly smart. I wasn't, organised. I didn't have all these quirks that were all kind of associated with being high functioning. But then on the other end of the scale, thinking myself that there was only two ends, then there was no in between. Low functioning, I didn't seem to fit in either. I was somewhere in between, but I didn't believe there was an in between because one of the big stereotypes was my belief and the belief put onto me that there was only really low functioning, high functioning. So that, and the fact that I thought that males primarily had it, made me really consider that someone stuffed up along the way and diagnosed me incorrectly. It didn't help that I had other mental illnesses that I just thought, maybe this aspect that I now know is a symptom of autism, and my autism specifically, I just thought, that must be just a symptom of this disorder, this anxiety, or my OCD, or my depression. And another aspect of the symptoms that were really stereotyped is special interests. Now, again, special interests, as shown by the media, are quite often things like really scientific things, maths, trains, stuff like that. And those are all great special interests that lots of people have. But the media seems to cancel out the fact that particularly females have special interests that are classified as a bit more socially acceptable. And that's primarily because females have a ability to kind of look around and they seem to sponge off other people. So they do a lot more masking. So I do want to make an entire video based on the differences between people that are female on the autism spectrum and people that are male, and how there's a specific female traits that are less known, less common, but are more seen in females. Now these things include the fact that special interest can be quite often more socially acceptable. So as a young child, my special interest was fairies, which seems pretty common, and mine was more something that other people my age enjoyed. But the difference is that I probably took it a bit too far. I really was very obsessed, very preoccupied, had my own little world, very imaginative, and I did have all these facts, and I really obsessed over movies, fairies, and etc. And that is in fact a special interest, which I now know. So that's another aspect of a stereotype that was ingrained in me and made me believe that I was incorrectly diagnosed. Now, it really was only 2 years ago that I began educating myself on the disorder. Really, it was initially me trying to prove once and for all, to come up to a conclusion as to if I did have it or if I didn't. I went into this with the assumption that I would discover that I was, in fact, incorrectly diagnosed. But I learnt a lot about the disorders. I learned about how autism is now one diagnosis, that how our Asperger's has been taken out of the DSM and put into a more inclusive diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder to incorporate more people in it, because someone doesn't necessarily have to be on the high end or low end, and can in fact be in the middle, like myself. And I learned all these things and I realised that I do in fact have Asperger's syndrome or autism spectrum disorder. Autism spectrum disorder myself, I think, fits me personally a bit better, like the label itself and what it classifies, because Asperger's itself didn't necessarily always feel like it fit, which was another big reason as to why I doubted I had it. And I wanted to make this video purely because I wanted to talk about how sometimes stereotypes, how they're never intended to negatively impact people, but they can, in a sense. So I'm sure there are other people like myself who have only known autism by a specific stereotype, and as a result have doubted their diagnosis, and that's of no fault of their own. It's just something that the media educates us on. And now the media likes to kind of grab onto different things and stick with it. So I've got mixed feelings. It's a bit of a hit and a miss when it comes to like Big Bang, for example. Big Bang does do a great job of educating people on autism and different symptoms associated with the disorder. But in saying that, it does include lots of stereotypes. And those stereotypes are the things that teach us as a society. Like, most people don't go out of their way to educate themselves on the disorder, like I did a few years ago. Before that, the only times I was learned or taught about autism was via the media. And Big Bang Theory, for example, only really teaches, Sheldon's obviously got savant syndrome, which can be associated with autism. People with autism are more likely to have it, but it's still very, very rare. He's got special interests that are more adult-like, more stereotyped, science-based, etc. He's very organised, he's got all these quirks. He's very based on a very stereotyped version of Asperger's. And it's great that they portray it in a very popular TV show, but it also makes some people a little less educated on the fact that there are a lot more symptoms, a lot more to learn. I have learned a lot about myself by educating myself on these matters, and I think it was really great and beneficial to myself, because now I've been able to incorporate my struggles that I have identified through learning more about autism into my therapy lessons, and have gotten myself more help that I should have gotten a long time ago had I believed I had autism and sought out assistance with my life in association with becoming more independent with Asperger's, etc. But I am now on the right path, because I have found where I belong in the diagnosis. I do have it, I do believe in it, and I plan to use my YouTube channel to educate other people so that the stereotypes are wiped out, all the myths and misconceptions are wiped out, and people become more aware of the disorder as a whole and how it has a huge amount of symptoms and encompasses all these different things, and hopefully it can help other people like myself. Thank you so much for watching. I'm very new to YouTube, but if you enjoyed this video and want to learn more, I do plan to make weekly videos based on my disorder and my experience with autism, as well as my experience with my mental illnesses, anxiety, depression, OCD, ADHD, and how I want to educate others like I have in this video, hopefully. Thank you for supporting me, and please subscribe, press the bell icon, like it, anything. I would be greatly appreciative of that. Thank you.